At time with Jordan. Is this mic on? The mic is live. Alright, we are ready to go. Foodie talk. Alright. On the radio, let's stop footing. Yes, this is AI. Keen to get started. Pump those ratings up high. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Alrighty guys, welcome back to another episode of Airtime with Jordan. I'm your host Jordan Faso, and we're done with round 7. We're back on the podcast this week, and we are going to be going through our weekly power rankings as per usual. So, yeah, stay tuned for that one. It's coming up first, and then a bit of a different one this week. We're going to go through each team in order of the ladder, and I just wanted to give like a bit of highlight some players that I think are underrated from each team. I think it's a pretty subjective sort of thing on my part, but just some guys that I think are just sort of going maybe underappreciated in some aspects, even though maybe the consensus is that they're very good players. But then, just some other guys who I think just deserve a bit of a shout out in general, and maybe on the up and coming. So, we'll go through the power rankings, then we'll go through an underrated player from each team. So a bit of a fun one this week, guys, and then we're going to go through the Secret Star Society as well, the inductee for round 7. So, with that being said, let's get into it. Start with the power rankings, as I said off the top, and I've still got the Lions number 1 for me. They had a bounce back win for them in a pretty big way over the struggling Saints at the moment, which obviously got Ross Lyon back in his angry mood. I saw him giving a few people a spray, subbed off Hugo Garcia early in the second quarter as well. So, the Lions sort of triggered Ross in that way, and they're back on the winners board. I think, going to leave them in the number 1 spot for now, but there is a team that is making a charge, and that is the Collingwood Magpies. They are undeniable at this point that they are an absolute premiership contender, if not the favourite right now. I still am holding on hope to Brisbane. I think that they're yet to play their best footy. Obviously, it's shortened off season and stuff, but Collingwood, they moved up to second on my power rankings now, and they've gone up 1 spot from last week, and they just keep this train moving. The old guys are still dominating. Obviously, still side bottom getting the best on ground in the Anzac Day clash. So that was another accolade for him to collect. And then Dacos, instrumental. I thought he was really, really good again. And no need for Darcy Moore either, which is probably a good sign for the Pies considering how well they played without him. And the only real bad thing for the Pies coming out of this game was Dan McStay going down with a knee injury. He avoided any sort of serious knee injury, which is good. So should be back in about 6 weeks, I think the estimate is. So that's a good sign for Collingwood fans, and hold their breath for a minute there, because he's been very, very good to start the year, Dan McStay, for them. Coming in third, we've got Geelong. They've gone up 1 for me this week as well. I know they lost to Carlton on the weekend, but it was more just the team that fell beneath them. They just couldn't get over the line against the Blues in this close one in the end, and it was a bit of a bad matchup for them in the end with Jack Henry out. Of course, the Blues had the first game for the year with both Harry and Charlie. Well, second, but Harry got concussed against West Coast within about 10 seconds. So, obviously had to deal with the 2 key forwards. Harry played really, really well for the Blues. I'll get to that in the Blues segment, but. I think it was just, as I said, a bad matchup. Tom DeConey just dominated the Geelong in the ruck, and Reece Stanley didn't really offer much else, obviously. And then, it really gave them, Geelong mids, not much of a chance in this one. They tried everything. They threw Danger in the midfield. He couldn't do anything either. So it was just, a really, really strong performance by the Blues, more than it was a bad one for Geelong, I think, in the end. And they've moved them up a spot, but not through their own doing. The Hawks as well, I've got them moving up a couple spots. They were 6 last week. They got the job done against the lowly West Coast Eagles, and hopefully found some form as well. I think it's more just Geelong and Hawthorn moving up with the demise of the next team, and that is the GWS Giants, who I've been very high on all year. They're now 5th in my power rankings. They've dropped from 2nd to 5th this week, and I don't know, I'm just a little bit concerned about the middle of the ground for them. Kieran Briggs just not getting it done. I don't think he's probably been one of the been a pretty poor ruckman, I think, to start the year, and the dominance that I sort of expected Finn Callahan and Tom Green to have out of the middle hasn't really come to the forefront, I think, as well as I'd like. I think, the ceiling is still there for GWS, but I'm a little concerned about the middle of the ground for them at the moment. It's just not working as well as I thought. I think their forward line will be fine. I think their back line will be fine. But yeah, the mids are just not quite clicking at the moment for the GWS Giants. So that's why they've dropped 3 spots for me this week, in fact. So yeah, that gives Collingwood, Geelong and Hawthorn a bit of a bump, obviously. But yeah, that's where I'm at with them. The Doggies, they're coming in 6th now. I'm just buying it now. They're sort of they've moved up a spot, by the way, from 7th last week for me, and to be doing what they are on a consistent basis, despite the amount of injuries that keep piling up. And as soon as they get one person back, other people go down. They've had Adam Treloar hasn't been able to get his calf right. Liam Jones was out again on the weekend. Bont just doing Bont things, and I don't know. I don't think that they're necessarily going to win the flag this year, but they're just so competitive each week with the lineups that they're putting out there, and they're just like willing to compete, every single player on their list. And I think that they're going to be a tough team to knock out, of course. But I don't think they have that premiership upside, which is why I've got them 6th at the moment in the power rankings. So keep an eye on the Doggies though. As they start to get healthier, they might climb into contention for me as well. But I've got to acknowledge their start to the season has been very, very good. Who we got next? We've got Freo next. They've gone up a spot this week to 7th for me. I put them on watch a bit last week, and they really delivered against Adelaide on the weekend. Josh Tracy, just I know people probably don't watch a heap of Freo games. I get it; they're generally in pretty bad time slots. But Josh Tracy is just the prototypical key forward of what you need. He just gets to every contest. At worst, he's just drawing even in every contest as well. And he marks most things that come his way, to be honest. But the big thing is that he's drawing multiple defenders at the moment. It just makes life a lot easier on the rest of his forwards. And the mids are obviously targeting him a fair bit, but he commands that sort of attention. And the defenders are all over him, and it's making for easy goals for other players in the Freo forward line. And Josh Tracy, just unbelievable player at the moment. Adelaide, big drops for me. They've gone from 5th to 8th at the moment on my power rankings, and I don't know. I think my hopes for them sort of were centered around the fact that the way that the midfield was playing was legit, and I just don't really think that is the case anymore. And those mids, the start of the season pretty well, have definitely come back down to earth. The forwards aren't delivering on the same level, which maybe is probably dependent on the mids, but I think I am cooling on the Adelaide Crows at the moment until they can sort of find a more consistent level of performance through the midfield. I think Jordan Dawson didn't do much in the last quarter against the Freo the other night, and I'm a fan of Jake Saligo, and Matt Crouch, of course, is an accumulator, but there just isn't enough maybe for them to compete against the best of the best in the middle of the ground at the moment. Another big mover up on board for me was Carlton. They've gone from 12th to 9th. On the weekend, we finally got to see it. We finally got to see Harry and Charlie play together, and I sort of feel like maybe we caught them on a good day, but I am bumping them up, and their form hasn't been that bad all year, as I sort of discussed a couple weeks in a row. Like, they've been competitive in every game they've played so far. They had that horrible loss to the Tigers at the start of the year, but otherwise they've been very, very competitive and knocked off a Geelong team that was looking very formidable up until this point, obviously. And I just think that I don't know, they're sort of finding their brand of footy again, I think, and it is heavily reliant on their stars being there. And but that's sort of that's the whole shtick with Carlton, isn't it? It's like they've built this team around these stars, and surprise, surprise, when they get Harry and Charlie in the lineup firing, and TDK was amazing, and it just came out really well for the Blues on the weekend, and of course their game is pretty reliant on being bullies in all aspects of the game in terms of like the contested aspects of the game in the air and around the ball and clearances and stuff, but. I think they have as well found some serious role players in the last few weeks. I really liked what I saw from, I won't spoil it because he is the Secret Star Society inductee for this week, but one of the Blues players has caught my eye there. as well as like Jack Carroll on the back line. He played really well as well, I thought. So, they're finding a few pieces, and if they can stay healthy as a core group, then there's no reason why they can't be in and around the hunt. Their percentage is very good as well. Obviously, you have played West Coast and the Kangaroos, but if you compare them to the teams around them, they have a very healthy percentage at the moment, so that gives them a leg up in the standings as well, with the ladder. Gold Coast Suns, I'm dropping them. I dropped them a spot from 9th to 10th. You may say I'm a hater, but I am not buying it still. They're definitely better. Like, there's no way. This is definitely the best Gold Coast Suns team we have seen in the history, but I'm still skeptical. They've faced West Coast, Melbourne, North Melbourne, Richmond, Adelaide, and Sydney, and apart from the way that Sydney are going and the way that Adelaide are tracking, look, though, that is comfortably the easiest schedule in the AFL so far. And yeah, they are pumping teams, but I don't think that they're as good as people make it out to be. I'm still waiting for them to actually play somewhat of a genuine competition level at the moment, which they have not done. So that's why I've dropped them to 11th at the moment. Port Adelaide, dropped them to 10th at the moment. Port Adelaide, I have kept at 11th. Sorry, for them, it's then they had 2 good weeks, and then they played against the Kangas here, and they just weren't very convincing. Jason Horne-Francis showed that he is maybe one of those sort of targets, people who can be targeted, you can get under his skin, that sort of thing. So, he got triggered a little bit on the weekend. Maybe it's nothing of any weight. It's nothing we should carry too heavily, because it is the North Melbourne connection there. But there may be a few cracks when they're the hunted and not the hunter, I think, Port Adelaide. So it's just a watch for them. But yeah, if they continue their form of winning, they're going to shoot up this board past Gold Coast and Carlton for me, definitely. So yeah, just a watch for them. The big fall this week is the Sydney Swans as well as the Giants. The Swans have gone from 9th to 12th on my power rankings, and it's sort of unravelling quite quickly here for the Swans. And, I'm not really sure how much the reintroduction of Errol Goulden and Tom Papley fixes things. I understand that they're Australian level of players, but when they just honestly have the worst key position rotation in the AFL, I think, the Swans. And, when... I understand how good their smalls are, but yeah, I just don't know if they're going to be able to bridge that gap, especially with the poor start to the season. Errol Goulden's going to come back, and he's probably not going to be Errol Goulden for a few weeks. So yeah, I just think that the season is very quickly slipping away from the Swans. I was pretty what's the word? Not defended, but just thought I'd give them a bit of grace period at the start of the season, but it's just not happening for them right now. And yeah, as I said, there's only so much the Smalls can do to compensate the worst key position rotation in the league at the moment. So, and yes, that includes the West Coast Eagles and the Richmond Tigers. So make of that what you will. But yeah. The Saints, they're 13th. They've stayed where they are for me, and they just sort of suck, don't they? This is the St Kilda I thought that we would get in the preseason, and yeah, as I said a few weeks ago, I probably got a little bit ahead of my skis on the Saints. And if I'm a Saints fan, I'm actually not mad that they're losing. Like, obviously, you don't want your team to get smashed, but I think that for where they are, I don't think there's any point in them overachieving this year, only to be a bottom end finals team or just miss out again. Like, they need to. If you want to go back and listen to the Saints season preview, I sort of thought that maybe it's time to look at tanking. I think if I was the Saints, they need that top end picks, especially before Tassie come in and try and squeeze out a couple of years of top end draft picks. I think obviously the Alex Taru got a healthy suspension in the VFL on the weekend, that he's out for 4 weeks, so we're not going to see him for a little bit as well. So I think. Yeah, just sort of pack it up a little bit. We've got Mateus Philippou coming back in the next week or two. So let's just see take stock of the Saints maybe in a few weeks and whether they should sort of start pulling the pin on the season. I know it's a lot. I don't know. People don't like talking about tanking and stuff, but in terms of actually trying to build a contender, which I think the Saints fans would want to be trying to do eventually, it's not that ridiculous to start thinking in that regard, I don't think. Essendon, they're 14th still for me as well. They're just not quite there. I still think that they're absolutely above the next tier of teams that I'm going to talk about. But yeah, I think that they just can't put it together consistently enough. They're just sort of overreaching at times in games, I think, which keeps them looking competitive. But yeah, by the end of it, they just end up falling away a bit. But, I think the positives, you're seeing some signs from Nate Caddy finally after a slow start to the year. Zach Reed down back looks like he's going to be a future star as well. So hopefully he's able to stay healthy. And another one, Jackson Pryor, recruit from Brizzy. I think he's settling into the new team pretty well. And I'm liking what I've seen from him in the last couple of weeks off halfback. So, yeah, I think, good signs for Essendon. They're building nicely despite their ruck woes at the moment. But, yeah, I think that it's going to be a competitive, but they're going to be a plucky team, but lose a lot of games this season, I think, Essendon, eventually. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with the Bombers, and that's why they're 14th in the power rankings. Melbourne, they're 15th still. Yeah, they beat Richmond. They've won 2 in a row. All is well here. Nothing to see. Just kidding. It's absolutely the same team that made Petrarca and Melbourne fans cry 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I think the thing that everyone sort of, I don't know, the tide is maybe turning a little bit just because they got 2 wins in a row, but the reality is they were one sort of Cozzy Pickett audition masquerading as a masterclass, which saved them against Freo in the end. I think, without him, they don't win that game. It took an absolute blinder in one of the performances of the season to get them over the line in that game, and then they beat Richmond, who they should win based on talent and where everyone expects them to be. So, I think their season is still over, and I'm comfortably putting a line through the Ds for 2025. North Melbourne, they're 16th. Still no movement down the bottom of the power rankings for me. I think I've got these guys pretty much solidified for the moment anyway, and I'm going to defend the North rebuild a little bit. I know it was another frustrating, honourable loss, which is better than the last few weeks when they've been getting smashed. So I guess it's a step in the right direction. But, in this one, I think that they probably win this game 9 times out of 10 against Port if Nick Larkey didn't have the worst game in front of goals that I've seen him play. And yeah, they probably win it otherwise. And, good signs for them. Finn O'Sullivan looking like a very, very solid player. Doesn't seem too phased by the moment or anything like that at the moment. Too phased by the pace of the game at the moment. Georgie Wardlaw, second game back, showed some signs as well. Zane Dersma came on as a sub, and I thought actually impacted the game pretty well aerially. Interesting prospect, seeing if he can get a bit more consistent as the year comes on. And, as some of these guys start to develop, I think things are going to start coming together quickly for them. The 2 questions I do have for North is Cam Zerha. He's just fallen off a cliff. He's just really, really poor at the moment, I think. And Harry Sheasel, too, is just not really doing too much out there. I know, Kane Corns, I think, said yesterday he's called it cheesy ball or something like that. But I don't subscribe to that. I don't think he's getting cheap possessions. I just don't know where his best position is right now. Like, I think they need him off half back because who else is going to deliver the ball other than him? But yeah, I think just keeping tabs on Sheasel's development here because it feels like he's sort of petered out a little bit at the moment at North Melbourne. Richmond 17th still. They couldn't make it 2 weeks in a row where they've won, but as discussed, I think they've already outperformed where most people would probably think they would be at this point in the season. And West Coast, they've haven't moved off the bottom here for me, and the score line looked pretty. I think it was probably did them a favour. I think it looked a bit more friendly than it would have been otherwise. I think the Hawks let themselves down a bit there in that game in terms of their goal kicking and stuff, but they definitely look like a much more competent team when Jeremy McGovern is in the team, and I don't know why Oscar Allen's playing fullback is beyond me. Like, there's just weird vibes around this team, and the culture is completely shot. It just, I don't know, I don't even know why you would ever put Oscar Allen at fullback, and then you're questioning Sam Mitchell for playing Tom Barrass at full forward. Like, 2 can play at that game. You started the game, Andrew McWalter, so I don't know why he's having little weird digs at Sam Mitchell for a game you lost by 50. Do better, and then maybe Hawthorn don't put Tom Barrass at full forward. But yeah, anyway, and that's the power rankings for the week, guys. So yeah, as I said, a fair bit of movement this week. Obviously, the Swans falling big, Carlton going up a bit, Adelaide falling, and GWS also falling for being in the rankings. So they're the 3 big movers for the week. And let's get stuck into this underrated players segment. So, if you listen to the podcast, you probably know that I love to shout out some, unheralded or under-discussed players at times. And sometimes that might be a bit premature in the Secret Star Society segment, but this sort of segment came about after I talked about Brad Close a few weeks ago as a Secret Star Society inductee. He wasn't my typical pick, as I usually sort of like to highlight guys with maybe a little bit less experience or slightly less established or early on in their careers. Not to say I won't nominate some of these guys like Brad Close going forward, but I think that this is a good exercise to sort of go through each team. And do a bit of a sweep of the competition and pick my most underrated players from each team and sort of outline why I think they're good and why they're underrated potentially, and then just give them a bit of a shout out and also using the statistical similarity tool. We're gonna give some statistical similarity measures for these players. So based on the year so far, of course. So with that being said, let's get into it. We're going to start in ladder order, as I said, and for Collingwood, they're on top at the moment. So their underrated player is Jack Crisp. Now, he's maybe not underrated in terms of, I think everyone knows who Jack Crisp is. I think everyone knows what type of player he is, but I think that he sort of gets lost at times with amongst the stars at Collingwood. You got your Darcy Moore, your Nick Dacos, your Pendle, Sidebottom, etc. So I think that David DeGoey and Bobby Hill as well. So I think that with the star-studded team, someone's bound to get lost a little bit, and I think that the consistency that Jack Crisp displays for Collingwood I think that's why he's underrated and maybe taken for granted, I guess, in a way. And he was highlighted in the Anzac Day game for having played the most consecutive matches and tying Jim Steins on that record. But not only is he consistent in his streak, but he's also in his gameplay. He's just one of the most scalable players in the league, and by that I mean he has multiple roles that he can play. He can play a run with roll. He can be an accumulator inside, so he can shrink up or down in his role. He can play off half back. He can hit the scoreboard too with his raking left boot. And I think that he's a very, very important player, and he's been key to this sort of Collingwood sort of era of brilliance over the last, say, let's call it 6 or 7 years, I guess. And I just love to watch Jack Crisp play. He's settled in on the wing mostly this year, and his running ability just sort of stays at the elite level, regardless of where he plays. He just keeps going all day. He's doing really well this year, intercepting the ball. 4.1 intercept possessions this year makes him elite for a midfielder. So, he's doing plenty on the defensive side as well. And after running his stats through the similarity tool, we have got a few matches for Jack Crisp on the year. Obviously a small sample size, so take some of these with a grain of salt, but so far we've got Josh Kelly, Patrick Lipinski, Matt Johnson, Jake Saligo and Tim English. So interesting mix of players there. But so Jack Crisp is the underrated guy from Collingwood. Brisbane, we have Darcy Wilmot. I feel like he gets lost a little bit similar to Jack Crisp, I guess, in the fact that he gets lost in a different sort of cohort of players, whereas Darcy Wilmot sort of gets lost a bit amongst the young stars of the Brisbane team. Like everyone knows, the Ashcrofts of the world, obviously. But I think that Darcy Wilmot is such a promising talent. I think he has been a Secret Star Society inductee on this podcast before. But for those who don't know, he's a pacey sort of half-backer who shuts down his opponent first and foremost, and then his ground ball game is what he really prides himself on. He's averaging 6 ground ball gets per game at the moment, which is elite, and 7.1 contested possessions. So makes it hard for defenders to go up. Makes it hard for forwards to go up against him, because he just wins the loose balls that are available by himself. So he's just beating players to the ball that he's playing on all the time. And I'd love to see him increase his kicking efficiency. He's sitting at 72% at the moment, and his rebound 50s are only 3.4, which are below average and average respectively. So two really key stats for halfbacks that you want to see a little bit of an uptick in. But really really good player, and obviously at the start of his career too. So would expect those things get a bit better as the career goes on for Darcy Wilmot. And speaking of his comparisons on the year, we have Adam Sard, Jordan Clark, Mitch Hinge, and Ryan Burns. So it's good company to be in. A lot of halfbackers there that use the ball and rebound well. So hopefully he can sort of fall into that category as well. The Gold Coast Suns, we have one of their underrated players, is Will Powell. And this guy is just tough as nails, and if that was a person, he would be that personified. Geez. He is the ultimate team player and defender as well. He just uses the ball perfectly most of the time, and he's always been an elite intercept player. But there's even more sort of pressure on his shoulders this year with Charlie Ballard going down, of course, and he has 2 intercept marks per game, which is elite. He's above average in kicking and disposal efficiency. He's only losing 14% of his one-on-ones as a defender this year as well. So he's just a lead across the board at the moment, and he's one of those guys that, if you're not familiar with the Suns players, don't catch a lot of Gold Coast Suns games, wouldn't blame you, but he is one who absolutely pops off the screen when you're watching him down defense. So Will Powell is from the Gold Coast Suns, and he is their underrated player. Statistical comparisons for him on the season so far: Mitch Hinge, Joel Jeffrey, and John Noble as well. So pretty interesting that 2 of the other comparisons are Gold Coast Suns players in Jeffrey and Noble as well. So that's an interesting one there. Hawthorn, sort of a hard one for me to sort of speak of objectively. Obviously, I'm a big Hawks fan, so I rate a lot of the boys, but I think that for me, it's got to be Jack Scrimshaw. His defensive versatility to be able to match up on key forwards, small forwards, all while still sort of being one of the best, tough kick makers in the league. He just fits into any sort of backline, I think, and it's been an interrupted season so far for him with injury and suspension, so I'm just hoping he gets a bit more of a clean run of it in the back half of the year. But really good intercept marker as well, good ball user, as I said, and just really love the way that he goes. Plays a really tough brand of footy too. He's a pretty hard-nosed guy, so love watching Jack Scrimshaw play, and I think he deserves a shout-out. His comparisons on the year are Brandon Walker from Freo, so halfbacker, and then Liam Jones as well from the Doggies, so key back, obviously. So, sort of exemplifying exactly what I said. He's able to be a bit of a key defender and a small defender at times as well. So, pretty interesting comparisons there. Adelaide, Riley O'Brien. I think that he's sort of long been one of the more underrated ruckmen in the league, and I won't lie, he probably isn't the most complete ruckman around, especially around the ground in terms of marking and things like that and hitting the scoreboard. But for a team that needs ruck advantages in the middle, like Adelaide probably do, I spoke a bit about how their mids are struggling at the moment, but having one of the best ruckmen in the league in terms of pure ruck craft definitely goes a long way to helping in midfield, I think, and I think the fact that Adelaide as well have multiple marking targets up forward, it sort of mitigates his limitations a little bit being at the Crows, so maybe that's why he may not be as good in other places, but I think that what he brings to the Crows is really good for them, and his actual ruck work is just as elite as they come. The last 3 years he's been elite in hit-outs to advantage and hit-outs win percentage, so he is as good as they come in that regard, and so far this year he's above average in both categories as well. So hopefully he can get those numbers back up. But on the year his closest statistical comparison is Brodie Grundy as well. So obviously another ruckman, but I think that Riley O'Brien is absolutely underrated across the competition. GWS, my underrated player for them is Jack Buckley. He is just Dustin Fletcher reincarnated, I'm telling you. He has elite pace, he's a great kick as well, and very rarely loses one-on-ones. And I think that if Sam Taylor didn't exist, he would be one of the most in-demand or hyped key defenders in the league. And, it's a pretty big luxury for GWS to be able to pair the two of them. It's a defensive coach's absolute dream, I think. And on the year, his statistical comparisons are Tom Barrass and Harris Andrews, so you can see he's playing at a pretty good level if he's in Harris Andrews' company in particular. So, love seeing Jack Buckley play, and he's 27, which is actually sneaky old. I think he's been on the list for a while, so late bloomer a little bit, I think, as well, which it's why he's only sort of come onto the scene in the last couple of years. Geelong. well, I did say at the start of the show that that Brad Close was one of the reasons, but I can't pick him in, unfortunately, for this segment. So I've gone with another mid forward of the Cats, and that's Sean Manor. I think that he's obviously came into the league last year as a mature age recruit, and just one of those guys that always seems to be in the right spot. He kicks goals. He's racks up possessions as well as a high half forward, and just has a consistency to his game that you would expect from a mature age recruit. And he has plays with a bit of a chip on his shoulder as well. I'd say he's having a really, really strong year this year. He's elite in his inside 50s, his intercepts, his score launches, tackles inside 50, and finds plenty of it as well. I think he's elite for a forward in terms of his possessions, averaging around 20 a game this year. So yeah, he's having a very, very good year, Sean Manor. His statistical comparisons for reference are Matt Kennedy from the Doggies, Isaac Rankin, and Tim Kelly. So good mix of players there, and yeah, I think Geelong have, unfortunately for the league, found another really, really good mature age recruit. Let's get on to the Doggies. So, yeah, my underrated player for them is Ed Richards. It's starting to turn a little bit, I think, in terms of him not being underrated anymore. But I think people are generally aware, but I think it just needs to be reiterated how good this guy is. He's so tough on the ball. Made his name as a halfbacker, of course, and who's turned into the midfielder in recent seasons. And yeah, dual possession threat players are just so valuable in the league. Being able to play inside or out is just such an advantage to have when you're moving the magnets around, of course. And his usage has sort of increased so far this year with the outs that they have. So he's up to 25 disposals on the year. He loves to run and bounce. He's always one of the leaders in bounces per game. Elite at getting inside 50s as well. So really damaging player. Has become more so playing more inside this year. Like some other players, he obviously needs to clean up his disposal at times, and he'll go to another level yet again. And at times in his career, he's been an elite intercept player. So if the Dogs ever need to shore up their defense, they have the luxury of putting him down there as well, which is, as I said, big luxury to have. So far, his statistical comparisons are still side bottom. Lockie Neal, Sam Davidson, Matt Kennedy, LDU, and Marcus Windhager. So a lot of tough nuts around the ball there, and he is definitely in that company at the moment. Freo, the underrated player I've gone for them is Luke Ryan. So he's a multiple-time All-Australian. I think that, I don't know if he necessarily qualifies as underrated. I think everyone probably who knows a bit about Freo's team knows Luke Ryan, of course, but he's just the ultimate general, and I feel like he doesn't get enough attention, especially on the East Coast at least. He's one of those players who's just the ultimate quarterback. He sets up the defense, uses the ball well, reads it as well as anyone in the game, and I promise you he'd walk into any team in the league and be a top 5 player in their team. I think he's just that good, and I think that he definitely deserves a bit more of a shout out. He had a few scary moments the other week against Adelaide, I think it was, last weekend. He had matched up against Rochelle a few times. Who had him for pace, but he's just such a smart player, and I love watching Luke Ryan play the game. His statistical comparison so far in the year is Nick Vlosten as well, so a very comparable player. Probably not as athletically gifted as Nick Vlosten, but as I said, reads the ball well, uses it well as well. So that's why we've gone with Luke Ryan from Freo. Port Adelaide, we've got Kane Farrell. He's really the only elite kick in the back half of the ground for Port Adelaide, and that's, of course, prior to Connor Rozee being put back there. So, that's a bit of grain of salt there. But, he has had a bit more usage put on his plate this year with Dan Houston's departure. Still ranks above average in his kicking efficiency though, so with that increased usage that is put on his plate, he's still at a above average level, which is what you want to see from a halfbacker with his skill set. The one concern is he is very much a one-way player, but with the size of Port's defence around him, they can sort of accommodate for his lack of size and defence. But uses the ball super well, takes tough kicks, and is a scoreboard threat from the back half as well. So that's the sort of backman that you're going to. That everyone sort of is chasing at the moment. Carlton, I've gone a little I think that like this is probably maybe a prisoner of the moment sort of thing here, but I think underrated for me is Nick Newman. I think he's out for the year obviously, but I think Blues fans probably know how important he is to them. But across the league, like his absence has left a massive hole down back for them. They lack a ball user and decision maker of Newman's caliber, and as well as that, his IQ is just really, really good in terms of helping them get set up, which is irreplaceable. I think Jacob Wiedering obviously is a bit of the commander back there, but yeah, Nick Newman as well is absolutely key to their defense, and I sort of hope that the Blues defense this year holds up, and then his reintroduction next year is sort of icing on the cake for them for their backline at least. So yeah, I think that Nick Newman absolutely underrated across the league and definitely deserves a bit more of a shout out. Essendon. So, the underrated player for me for Essendon is Kyle Langford. So, when I did a deep dive of Essendon last year, I was pretty firm on sort of, being pretty liberal in terms of trading some of their players and who I thought was gettable. I think there was only 3 or 4 guys that I thought that were sort of untouchable on their list, and that Kyle Langford wasn't one of them. But I think what I maybe underestimated with Kyle Langford when I was going through that exercise was the level of versatility that he provides to Essendon. He's a player who can play, inside mid, on a wing, off half back, or as a key forward. Even if you wanted, I'm sure he could be a key defender as well on some matchups. But that sort of versatility is very rare in the AFL, and I think that he may be Essendon's most vital sort of structural piece as well as the most versatile. So I don't think you can give that player up necessarily, and every team would absolutely love to have a Kyle Langford in their squad, and I think he'd play for every team in the league as well. So, with that being said, his statistical comparisons are Miles Bergman and Lawson Humphrey. So, pretty interesting 2 halfbackers are his comparisons at the moment, but yeah, that's where his stats lie at this point in the season. The Saints. So their underrated player for me is Jack Higgins. So as far as goal sneaks go, he may not be the most athletic or flashy, but he is absolutely A+ in terms of his forward craft and his ability to use his body, bump his opponent at the right time, always to his advantage. Whether that's in a marking contest or to get out the back on his opponent. Is near best in the league. There aren't many better people at using their body and body work in the contest as Jack Higgins can, and he has every kick in front of goal as well, like as what you'd assume for a small forward. But yeah, he can kick every single goal in the book. Also helps that he is second right now in the Coleman, so that's pretty exciting for Saints fans. For what's looking like a bit of a shaky season, at least they can sort of cheer for Jack Higgins as the season goes on. His statistical comparisons for reference are Seth Campbell, Dane Zorko, Brad Close, and Max Hall, his teammate. So, yeah, a few nice ones there for Jack Higgins, and yeah, hopefully he continues his goal kicking rate at the moment. Sydney, it's James Rowbottom for me as the underrated player for them. He is absolutely Mr. Consistent for the Swans. I actually think he's properly rated right now. I guess that the narrative for so long was how he was sort of the forgotten star in the midfield and how he did all the dirty work for the Stars and stuff. And that really hasn't changed. But he isn't ever going to be the disposals or goals guy for the Swans. So, of course, he's not going to get the attention that the others do in the Sydney midfield. But he absolutely picks up the rest of the slack. He's always a contested beast. He ranks elite for contested possession rate. And he's above average for clearances in all formats. Stoppage, centre clearance, etc. So he's always best in the league for tackles and pressure acts as well. So he's just doing everything else other than, obviously, I think he averages around 20 disposals a game, so he's finding it plenty for a mid that's in that sort of midfield with Heaney and Warner and Errol when he's there as well. But yeah, just an absolute contested beast, and the Swans have dropped off here this year, but he is very much around his career averages. So yeah, not necessarily his fault, I don't think. His statistical comparison on the year is Hugh McCluggage, interestingly, from the Lions there. Melbourne, their underrated player for me is Jake Bowie. One of the real sort of shining lights for Melbourne this year has Jake Bowie been. He's, in the midst of a breakout year, which, unfortunately for him sort of coincides with the team plummeting at the moment. So, maybe hasn't been as noticed, which is why I wanted to shout him out. He's increased his disposals by 8, his clearances by 2, he's doubled his tackles from 1.4 to 2.9, all while increasing his efficiency as well. So he's become elite at intercept possessions as well. So every part of his game at the moment is increased in terms of volume and efficiency, which is like pretty incredible, really, considering how bad the D's have been as well. So, and that's including his defensive work. So for a backman to increase his offense and defensive output is just pretty crazy at the moment, and yeah, definitely deserves a bit of a shout out. And his statistical comparisons are all over the map at the moment. He's got Matt Roberts from the Swans, Sam DeConing, Caleb Daniel, Rory Laird and Tom Brown as well. So a few halfbackers there, obviously, but the Sam DeConing one sort of threw me for a loop, I think. Richmond. I think I have to say this guy because I think that he's just criminally underrated and has been throughout the whole sort of Richmond dynasty. He's been one of the absolute key cogs back there, and it is Nick Vlauston. Everyone else on the list is probably too young or properly rated, I think, but he is just the ultimate market consistency. His stats have been effectively the same every single year dating back to their first premiership in 2017. He's one of the best aerially for a mid-sized defender, if not the best we've ever seen. He's just so good in the air. His contested marks and intercept marks are always elite. He's always above average by foot or elite by foot. Always top in rebound 50s. Just about everything you sort of want, and then even more for a mid-sized defender to be. And I think that, as I said, he sort of got lost a little bit in the I don't know, the quality of players that they had at the time through that era. And I think once Alex Rance left, the back line definitely became his domain. And I think we just don't still give him enough flowers, as many, or not as many as we should anyway. Nick Vlauston, he is just that good. On the year, his statistical comparisons are Nick Haynes, Luke Ryan, of course, as Luke Ryan was his, and Kane Farrell too. So yeah, a few, obviously all backmen, but yeah, that's his closest statistical comparisons for the year so far. North Melbourne, underrated player, maybe not so much anymore. He's been talked about quite a bit this year, but Paul Curtis, I'm going to say, he's a small forward who plays a lot like a key forward, kicks a lot of goals, and he reminds me of a bit of Mark Williams, for those that remember old shotgun Mark Williams at the Hawks. So that undersized sort of mid forward, I guess, small forward who plays like a bit bigger than that, and definitely piling on the goals so far this year. He's 5th in the Coleman at the moment, and he's sort of outpacing his key forward in Nick Larkey, which is a pretty crazy result to me so far in this year anyway. And he's just a consistent performer, and pound for pound, he might be the strongest player in the game, and you definitely don't want to be tackled, bumped, or fended off by him. Just ask poor Josh Sin on the weekend. So, yeah, he's had a really good start to the year. I think he deserves more attention as well for what he's doing in another struggling North Melbourne team. His comparisons on the year as well: Jamie Elliott, Jack Ross, Riley West, and Taylor Walker as well. So, nice blend of a few small forwards and Jack Ross being a mid, of course, and then Taylor Walker key forward. So pretty interesting group there. West Coast, Ruben Ginbey is my underrated player, and I will keep banging this drum. I've talked about it on the pod about him on the pod a little bit, but he is just massive. He is, and it has immense sort of versatility as well as running power. He's a true utility defender with his ability to match up on bigger or smaller forwards. Has the ability to go into the midfield as well. And I sort of think as long as West Coast keep developing him, he's probably on track to become one of the best utilities in the league, I think. And, I think he really is underrated, especially in the East Coast. I think that, fair enough, probably given the state of the Eagles, probably not too many people keeping tabs on them. But, I think he is one to absolutely shout out for how good his development has been over the first 3 years. And on the year, his comparisons are Mason Wood and Rory Lobb. So, yeah, we've gone through the ladder there, guys, and hopefully that's good little segment to just shout out some players and get you guys familiarised with some guys who are really playing well around the league this year, and I think deserve a bit more praise than they probably get otherwise. So, yeah, with that being said, let's do it again. Let's do another one. Secret Star Society time. Let's close out the show, guys, with round 7's inductee, and I'm going with Will White from Carlton, and this kid just has something that I'm sort of enjoying, like from just a watchability standpoint. He's 21, he's 179 centimetre forward, skilled left footer, maybe a bit undersized, but sort of finds himself in good positions more often than not. He's averaging 1.3 goals per game, 3.8 marks, 6.5 score involvements as well. So I think that he's doing like a lot of things right at the moment. His efficiency numbers need a bit of work, but the fact that he is above average in the goals and and his score involvements in a 4-game sample size as a small forward is definitely a good sign to start your career. And if he continues to work on his ball use and get his defensive numbers up, he's only at 0.5 tackles inside 50 per game, then he's going to become a serious player. And I think he really needs to work on the pressure side of his game if he wants to stick. But just like the scoring side of it, which might come back down to earth, I think everything needs to sort of be taken with a grain of salt, given that it's only 4 games so far. But yeah, I think that it's worth keeping an eye out for him. I think the Blues have probably found a keeper here, and it's definitely something they needed and actually makes always a little bit more palatable as well. So yeah, that's why Will White is this week's Secret Star Society inductee. So thanks for listening, guys. It was a bit of a longer one, but yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the bit of a fun segment with the underrated players this week. And we'll be back next week.